Hello, and welcome to a short homily for proper 20-year A, 15th Sunday after Pentecost. Our readings for today are Jonah 3:10 through 4 and 11, Psalm 145, 1 through 8, Philippians 1:21 through 30, and our gospel lesson is Matthew 21 through 16. How many of us here with siblings or who were raised with other people in our houses recall growing up with feelings that we were treated unfairly, that sometimes we were last? How many firstborns eventually complain that their parents let younger brothers and sisters get away with more than they had at the same age, or in my case, feeling that my older sisters had more liberty than I did? Isn't it funny, true really, that one of the first things we learn in life is to develop a view of what seems fair and what doesn't seem fair? So, as the youngest and the only boy, I really did get away with much more than my older sisters. My wife, Nick, the only girl and the youngest, same thing. Here's another example. How long have you been a member of this church? Are you a first-timer? Or is your involvement limited only to being able to worship virtually? Is it your first time, or like me, your 7th year here? Somewhere out there is a member who has been here the longest, and somewhere is someone who has been a member for the shortest amount of time. Which brings up some questions. Do you think those who have been members longer should have more benefits? More access to pastoral care, for example, more influence with the vestry, be the first in line for first Sunday breakfast, assuming we have those again someday? Do you think that those who can afford to tithe more than others, or those who have the time to be involved in more church activities, or those who are vestry members, should have more benefits? These questions may seem silly, but they may help us to understand better the sense of outrage expressed by the longer-serving laborers in today's gospel story, who saw their treatment as a matter of unfairness. Certainly, we feel sympathy for those who worked the longest and accomplished the most, without so much as an employee of the day recognition. At a minimum, we should feel a painful sense of injustice. Living in community, and even as members of St. Timothy's Church, virtually or in person, we inevitably have experiences that allow us to identify with the workers in today's gospel story. Here's another example. My mother retired from Union Tank Car Company in Evanston, Wyoming years ago. When she retired, she had worked there the longest. She was second in charge. She was the only woman working there, and she was the lowest paid. Fair? Well, absolutely not. This is an example of economic and social injustice, but it happened. The point is, and as the Reverend Ken Kesselis explains, in today's gospel lesson, Jesus succeeds in shocking us out of our common misunderstandings of God by affirming a deeper insight into the character and purposes of God. He wants to shake us out of our usual self-understanding by opening us to a deeper awareness of ourselves and to transform us more into the image of God. Jesus wants to experience this parable as a way to learn what lies beyond viewing the events as simply unfair or fair, or to catch a glimpse of the utter limitless generosity of God. Not or to, but and to. He wants us to understand that the worth of human beings is not measured by how much we earn and pay, or how well we perform, or by any of our usual measures: status, popularity, social achievement, productivity, wealth, physical appearance. Jesus wants us to know that our worth as human beings is absolutely affirmed by God, who guarantees our value as human beings. Don't get me wrong, it's not that our works aren't important. They most certainly are. But as far as today's parable is concerned, today's lesson is concerned, we need to focus less on the amount of work we do and more on God's creative and life-affirming love for us. Jesus wants us to know that in the face of our limited worldly understanding of what is fair and what is unfair, God works with a different reality, in a different direction, and by different standards. Through today's parable, God gives us chances to realize our potential through God's unconditional love and acceptance, each in our unique way, restricted, of course, by our own limitations and views of fairness, and yet empowered by our individual talents and gifts. Consider volunteers, parents who gave up a great deal of time, energy, and even money, coaching youth sports or teaching Sunday school or leading scout troops, or even providing children with a safe place to eat and sleep, helping children of other able parents who for one reason or another didn't volunteer to do their fair share. Do you think that these volunteers feel the same way about their work as the laborers who worked the longest? I can't speak for everyone else, but never have I once sensed unfairness with the parents of the boys like my Christian or Patrick or Malloy and several others that Nick and I have been blessed with helping to improve their lives over the years. In fact, I consider it a blessing that Nick and I were given the opportunity to help them. Today we hear Jesus explain the overwhelming reality of God's love in this world. Jesus simply wants us to recognize the power and presence of God in the life of each and every one of us. Jesus shows us that God calls us to respond positively to what he has given us, not to dwell on what others receive. He wants us to work in his vineyard with happy hearts and willing bodies. Working and serving in God's world is a great privilege and opportunity, and the reward for our service is the joy of knowing that we are part of a great adventure that gives meaning to our lives. The reward for serving others is found in knowing that we are part of the Christian process of laboring to leave the world a little better than when we entered it. In telling this parable, Jesus makes it clear that God would have us concentrate on our own spiritual condition, not on spending time and energy considering everybody else's spiritual condition. We are to accept our ultimate worth and our ultimate purposes without comparing our contributions to the contributions of others. We are given a glimpse of life, given a glimpse that life is from God's point of view, not a matter of fairness or unfairness, not a matter of deserving or undeserving, but as a reminder that whatever we have is, after all, a gift from God, and our God is overwhelmingly generous. You don't need to trust me on this. I'm sure you can feel it in your own hearts. It is enough that we have the profound privilege of laboring and serving in God's vineyard. So the last will be the first, and the first will be the last. Amen.